Welcome, Puyaka Puyaka. I'm your host, Tijani Musa. All right, in the studio today, man, it's an exciting episode. I'm so excited about this guest. Just a little disclaimer, this guest and I went to the same high school, and we kind of grew up in the same area. And then after graduating from high school, we went our separate ways, and we still stay connected throughout the years. And so let's get into the meat of the conversation. I'm going to introduce him, and then I'm going to ask him some questions, and he's going to spill knowledge. And I hope that you benefit from it, and then you can use the information as you see fit. My guest today is Elliot Roth. Elliot
What's
is,
up?
that's right. Elliot is the founder of Spira, a company that creates replacement for animal and petroleum compounds in the supply chain using genetically engineered algae. Spira has received awards from RebelBio, Lighthouse Labs, the World Food Program, Halcyon Incubator, BeGreen, CommBeBiz, and NFS. He has presented as SXSW, Synbiobeta and Thought for Food. Elliott is a Kairos Fellow, a Seasteading Ambassador, and sat on the Virginia's Board's Council for Youth Entrepreneurship. Before Spira, Elliott graduated with a degree in biomedical engineering. He trained at the Stanford School, studied synthetic biology for 12 years, and worked for 5 years as a product consultant. He previously founded 6 failed startups and 2 successful nonprofits, including an open community science lab, and raised over $1 million for various startups. He is incredibly motivated to solve physiological needs using simple biological design. In his spare time, he plays music, and he's working on side projects to make airships and health clinics on the ocean. Elliot, man, welcome to La Verdad Duelo. Welcome to the podcast, man.
What's up? What's up, Johnny? Long time no talk, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Long time no seen, no long
Yep.
time no talk. Uh, the way we do it here at La Verdad Duele, we want to know your personal story. So tell us about yourself, where you grew up, and where you currently at.
Well, my personal story overlaps a tiny bit with yours. I mean, we grew up right outside Washington, D.C.,
Right?
more or less, and growing up in a little like suburban pocket outside of DC, going to what used to be called Jeb Stuart High School, now is called Justice High School. It was one of the most diverse high schools in the entire country. I started off at like Bailey's Elementary School, then Glasgow Middle School, and then finally Jeb Stuart High School, working and like it was like kind of interacting with the same group of people all throughout. And so it was really interesting to see everybody from like first grade onward. It was a very diverse mix of people. I mean, I remember learning math and science and Spanish in like a Spanish immersion class, and taking classes with people from like all walks of life, man, like really all over the place. And so it was really phenomenal growing up in that kind of environment. And I always felt this kind of like affinity to science. And I remember in 8th grade, I was so pissed off because Mr. Leonard,
Uh-huh.
like our science teacher, he had this contest. And the contest was, can you come up with a science fiction idea that you think will be real in the next 10 years?
Hmm.
And so I worked with like Michael Wong, Mao Nguyen, a bunch of other, and Christian Barbosa, on putting together this idea for these little tiny robots that were supposed to like go in people's bodies. And so
Okay.
I have these like controversial opinions, these like contrarian opinions, where sometimes I think that we're doing things now that 100 years from now, people will look back and be like, that was crazy. That was
Right.
insane.
Right.
And one of those things is like surgery. And so back then we submitted this idea. We wrote up this entire paper. We were talking about these little robots that like swam around your veins and like fixed you whenever you had health problems. And Mr. Leonard was like, this is insane. I'm going to give you like a failing grade for this project and everything. But what he said was that if we were selected for any of the awards for this contest, he would upgrade it to a higher grade. He would give us an A. And
Okay.
so they came back and they said, hey, we're going to give you an honorable mention for this project. And he had to grudgingly give us an A for the project. And so stuff like
Wow.
that happened throughout my time in school. I remember almost setting Professor like Kolnick's,
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Kolnick's lab
Mm-hmm.
on fire. So I was really into like chemistry, biology, physics, everything like that. And I would hang out in the chemistry lab during lunch break and just kind of fiddle around with stuff. And this was in high school, and so I was working on this project where I was taking I was taking like sugar, like gummy bears, like other things like that, and I would take molten potassium chlorate, which is a compound that's very explosive.
Right.
And so I put it in the test tube, and it burned a hole through the test tube, and then like almost exploded in the fume hood in her lab. And so after that, she was like, "You're not allowed to work here over lunchtime. You gotta go bother Miss Kinney, who was the biology teacher."
Yes.
And so really that's what got me into biology growing up. Was I got kicked out of chemistry. My like middle school science teacher was like, your papers aren't great, and other things like that. So I was like, I might as well try biology. And so I got really obsessed with this idea of like DNA and how DNA is kind of like the coding language of life. And I really got into that with like my IBMYP project. We had like the International Baccalaureate program, everything like that. And so I got really focused on using DNA in all sorts of weird, strange ways. So when I went off to school, I mean, we didn't grow up in the best spot, not really.
Right.
And so I went to a school where I got a scholarship, and it's what my parents could afford. It was like a Virginia state school, VCU. And I went to the only laboratory there that had any kind of like biotechnology, any kind of like genetic engineering, DNA. They were working with DNA. And so I was super excited to go there and kind of participate in something like that.
Wow. That is awesome. All right. So now my understanding is, based on your background, you look like you are in sunny California. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I moved out here about 2 years ago. So from the time I went to school till now, there was a whole lot of things that happened. Man.
All right.
Whole lot.
Let's do this. Tell me about growing up Nova compared to living in California. What do you like about growing up in Northern Virginia, and what do you like about California, and some dislikes?
Yeah. So, I mean, in Virginia, let's just put it in perspective. Like the tallest mountain in California is like 14,000 feet tall, right?
Wow.
And in Virginia, the tallest mountain in Virginia is like 3,000 feet tall. So
Yeah.
things are just bigger here. There's like more stuff going on. There's more activities. And I would say that in Northern Virginia, especially like right around DC, people are very much climbers. They see things in a hierarchy. You got to like take the steps to get to the goal. And here in California, there's all sorts of like interesting ways to become who you want to be. Like it's really like the land of opportunity. When they said like go west, young man, and the gold rush and everything like that, there's this ambiance, this sense in the water even, where you can do the things that you set out to do. Whereas, in Northern Virginia area, you're kind of set in one path.
Right.
You don't really get to make that sort of decision for yourself. You got to really, really work hard stepwise to get to wherever you're going. So, I mean, that's kind of the difference between the two places. Here, I call it like the third door. So there's the first door where you're like waiting in line to get into like a club or something, right?
Right.
There's the second door where you have like a VIP entrance and they only let certain people in. And then there's the third door where you have to like sneak into the club by like pushing something against the wall, climbing up and like going through a window and everything like that. And I like to think that California has a lot of those third door style opportunities where you can break into something you wouldn't otherwise have gotten into. So I love it here. I do have to say that there's less of a family emphasis. There's less of a community emphasis that's here. Although you can find that in pockets of California. Like it's just like around Northern Virginia, where depending on where you are, it's completely different. So
that is correct.
Yeah, the diversity here is something I really prize too.
Okay. All right. And how's the weather like?
Oh, dude, it is sunny and beautiful and hardly ever rains. And and I live now like a couple blocks from a beach. So I wake up in the morning, go running down to the water, jump in the ocean, stuff like that. I can't complain. I wound up in one of the best places and I'm doing something I love.
All right. I'm going to ask you this question this way because I have read places and when I was doing my research about you to get more information about what you've been up to, and you've been telling this story in a condensed format about the starting of Spira. I don't want you to save anything. I want you to tell me the actual story of how you started Spira, from opening that fridge at your apartment with the nasty food from that fridge, and what inspired you to start Spira. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, first things first, like building the foundation, right? And
Right.
I was in school and I just wanted to have hands-on access to like scientific exploration opportunity. I think it's really important to give people the tools of discovery. And I never really had that, not only growing up, like we didn't even know like some of the things that you learn in college and things like that. Luckily, like we had wonderful people helping support us growing up and giving us opportunities we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. But like going off to school, I would show up at the laboratory every single day and have all these ideas and have all this passion. And I kind of got like pushed off a little bit and just made to do dishes. And I later found out that the grad student who was in charge of me was taking those ideas and using them kind of as his own.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, oh, like I don't want to be in this sort of system. I think that if you participate in a certain system, then you're actually giving it power. And so the best way that you can really circumvent a lot of that is by breaking systems down and you create your own. And so I went about starting a laboratory with one of my best friends in a garage space. And that was really where I spent most of my time when I was in undergrad, was tinkering around in this homemade lab. And we like got equipment wherever we could find it. I ended up becoming friends with the guy at the salvage yard and figuring out he liked salsa dancing. And so like trying to make some sort of arrangement where he could go salsa dancing and like pay for it and like other things like that. And so we set up a nonprofit to get all this lab equipment. And I was teaching kids in the inner city Richmond,
Right.
kind of going about spreading scientific literacy and giving engineers access to like hands-on problem solving. That was the key too, is like we weren't solving, we were just doing academic, like checking the boxes, like getting
Right.
A's on tests and stuff like that.
Right.
And that isn't real life. And so I wanted to solve real problems for real people. And that's what I went out to do. I went into the community and I found people with real issues, ranging from a guy who was a paraplegic and kept on getting ulcers from sitting in his chair too long because you don't notice, right?
Right.
Or somebody who, like different community members who needed a website just to get going or things like that. And so I didn't know how to do those things when I first started. I just kind of said yes. I was like, yeah, of course I could do it for you. And I kind of believed enough in myself that I said, I could figure it out. And
Right.
so that's how I started building experience in a portfolio. But the issue with doing that is that if you're doing a lot of work for free with people, you don't really build any sort of stability for
That's right.
yourself.
That's right.
And so while I was in school, I was doing this consulting work. I wasn't really getting paid for it or anything like that. And when I graduated, I had a big portfolio of things that I'd done. And I could have gone and gotten a job, but I sort of wanted to keep on working for myself. But I didn't know how to like manage a consulting group or anything like that. I didn't know how to really go about putting together an active business that built websites or marketing consulting or industrial design or anything like that. Those were the services I was offering. And so I would go meet up with these clients and I would get underpaid and work crazy hours. And some of them just wound up not paying me.
Right.
And
Right.
at that point, I was like, I had no money in my bank account. Luckily, like I have a supportive family. I could have moved back home around DC and like started living in my parents' basement. Like a lot of my friends ended up doing that,
Right.
which that's
Which is
okay. I
fine.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, as long as it gives you a stable place to really launch into whatever you wanted to do.
Right.
But there was this thing driving me where I was like, hey, like the world is really messed up. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and I want to change it. If I just accept some sort of job flipping burgers or like doing something normal, I will never get to the point where I'll be able to actively make an impact.
Right.
I'll be held back by this idea that I have to survive. So I decided to start testing myself. I was like, okay, I love experiments. Let me run an experiment. My experiment was how long could I live on how little? And particularly taking a look at like, what is the minimal necessity that I needed to survive? And so I moved out of my place at the time. I moved in with a girlfriend. I was couch surfing as well at different friends' places. And I was like stuck in this spot where, okay, I've eliminated the majority of my expense, which was rent.
Right.
I'm kind of like, I'm not driving or anything like that. I had a car, but I would like stash it at a friend's place. And the only thing that I had to pay for was food. And I was living at my old place. And one of my roommates, he just got a new job as like computer programmer. He went out and bought all of this food. And like, he was trying to eat healthy. He's a little bit bigger dude, and he was trying to slim down. So he bought all this really, really healthy food, but it was his food, right? And so he just completely forgot about it though, because he kept on going and getting like fast food while he was at work. And I came on home one day and I look in the cabinets, and there's these like rotting onions and this like really nasty, there's maggots growing in the refrigerator, and there's like this swarm of flies over near the bananas. And I'm like, right? Like I haven't eaten breakfast. I normally had sleep for dinner, right? Like I would have like one meal a day, and I was living off of other people's kindness. And that, to me, when I was looking at that, I was like, okay, there's a bunch of problems here. So number one, like, you want to get healthy, but it's not easy to do that at all. Like, it's so hard to maintain that consistent willpower for a long period of time to get healthy. Number two, whenever you get these like avocados or vegetables or other things like that, who the hell knows where they come from in the first place? Like, they're flying them in from Spain, you know, they come up from Mexico, other things like that. And it was the middle of winter. Where the hell were we getting fresh vegetables from if it's the middle of winter, right? And at the same time, I was like, okay, the supply chain that provides us food, so messed up. I like went to the grocery store. I was like, I got to get cleaning supplies. I got to figure this out, right? My place was a mess. And so I like had no money in my bank account. I got like soap, and I got soap, and I got water from the place, and I got some other like cleaning detergent, stuff like that.
Right.
And I was looking at the shelves and being like, this is insane. Like, the way that we do food nowadays is just so messed up. The way we do anything that we purchase is like, it's taking all these different supply chains, bringing them all over the place. And I was like, okay, well, what if you could produce all the food you needed, all the nutrition you needed in a tiny space, no money whatsoever, and really, really quick? And so that's what really kicked off Spira, because I was like, okay, somebody must be looking into this. And I'm a giant space geek, right? Like, my dad's side of the family comes from Florida, like Space Coast. I used to go down there over the winter and like visit my grandma, watch rocket launches, stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, NASA probably solved this in some kind of way. You need to provide for people in a tiny space, no money. And so I wound up looking into this research, and I was like, oh, like algae. It's like the simplest plant around. It can produce all the things plants produce, and it's really densely nutritious, grows crazy fast, better than vertical farming, you know? And so I was like, okay, well, if astronauts are doing this, why can't I do it? So I started like growing algae in my garage lab, and everybody was freaked out. They were like, what the hell are you doing, man? Like, just get a job. Like, what, like, why can't you support yourself? And I was like, I am just like, let me grow this stuff and I'll eat it, and then I'll support myself. You don't have to worry about me.
That's it.
And people were freaking out because they were like, what is this green goop that you keep on eating? And I was like, try it. It's amazing. Like, it doesn't taste like anything. It's great. And I'd never felt more energized or healthy in my life during that time. And I think it was because I was pursuing something that I knew was right at the core of my being. And everybody else around me was like, you're insane. And I was like, no. When you really think about it, and you think really, really deeply and think long term, everything that humans are doing right now are insanely harmful to your health, damaging to the planet. The ingredients of the stuff that you're eating impacts your health in a really negative way. So every time you go out and eat something, like, you're kind of poisoning yourself. And so I finally felt clear-headed and level-minded, because I was eating things that were good for me, and I was doing it in a way that was supporting myself. And so that's really like the core of it, that aha moment where I was like, okay, everybody needs to eat algae. We got to use this stuff to produce the basic ingredients, that foundation of whatever we need. and do it in such a way that we can produce it locally. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of what launched me.
Oh, wow. Man, what a journey, huh?
Yeah. And it gets even weirder, man.
What a journey. So now you started this idea of Spira, and
Right.
you were able to find a way to get people to buy into the idea, and now you have a team of 4 or 5 people, right? You, the
Yeah.
other co-founders, and your
We have 4 people full-time and then another like 6 to 8 contractors that are part-time.
Awesome. See, your team is growing. And so for aspiring entrepreneurs, based on your experiences thus far, the things that you've learned along the way in this journey to start Spira, what would you say to somebody looking to start their own business? And coupled with the fact that you have 6 failed non organizations, startups
Right.
that you've
7
experienced,
now.
7 failed startups. Put that experiences together. What would you say to somebody who is looking to start
Whew.
a business?
So a couple of lessons learned throughout that period of time. So when I was in school, I started 6 companies. All of them ended up failing in various ways. And I think part of it was I was solving problems for people other than myself. You gotta first off solve a problem that really hits home, makes a difference to you, and is solving a problem for yourself that you use all the time.
Hmm.
There's this Warren Buffett quote where he said, well, there's a couple of different things there. So number one is if you want to be a millionaire, make something people use. And if you want to be a billionaire, make something people use every day. So figure out what is a problem that occurs to you every single day that you would use all the time.
Right.
And then try to solve for that. So for me, it was like food, the basic ingredients of the stuff that we use. Second thing associated with that is I wanted to be a billionaire, not in the sense of money, but in the sense of the impact that I was trying to make. Whenever you ask an entrepreneur, like, why are you starting a company? Why are you starting a business? And somebody comes back to me and says, oh, it's just for the money. It's for the fame. It's for like attention or other things like that. I hear that and I'm like, they're not going to be successful because they're not in it for the problem. They're not focused on solving a real issue that they have that other people have. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tend to look at it as how do you make an impact on 1 billion people? How do you really shift the world to a better place? And that's really the core essence of entrepreneurship. So I would get into these partnerships with different people where I would start building a business with them. And I pretty quickly realized that they don't have that same kind of mindset. They want money. They want fame. They want power. They want all the things that you're not going to get as an entrepreneur until you focus on the problem and you solve the problem, right? And so I approach things from a standpoint of number one, you got to build something that people really want. You got to solve a core problem. And then number two, when you get involved in a team, and I think really nothing really happens unless somebody else does something, which is what a quote from one of my former entrepreneurship professors. You got to build a team that shares that same impact, value-driven decision-making. Otherwise, it's not really going to go anywhere. And then lastly, try to find something. This is core to really picking a good idea. I really specialize in these like contrarian beliefs. It's beliefs that most other people would disagree with. So like a question to you would be, what's something that you hold to be true that most other people would disagree with? And if you think really long and hard about it, what that identifies is really good business opportunities because it's something that you see that no one else sees.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Amazing. All right. So, man, I'm learning so much listening to you. The knowledge is coming, man. All right. So, personally and business wise, what would you say is the greatest achievement so far?
Ooh. Okay. So personally, I would have to say starting that laboratory is like really core to my being. I've started a laboratory wherever I go now. I've started 5 different labs over the course of my career. And in doing so, it opens up access to these tools of scientific discovery for people who wouldn't have otherwise gotten them. And that to me is really absolutely incredible because it enables people in ways you wouldn't even expect. And that kind of enablement where you take somebody who it has a bunch of like unknown unknowns about the world, things that they have no clue about whatsoever. And then you turn them into known unknowns. You say, hey, you do have the ability to do these things. You do have the ability to answer those questions that you've been asking. That's really astounding. So creating those communities that serve as tools for entrepreneurial opportunity, that's what I've been about anytime I start these different laboratories. So that is a personal achievement that I really pride myself on, setting
Okay.
up that nonprofit that's still ongoing in Richmond. A second achievement that I think as a company I really pride myself on is turning a profit. I think that is really core. It's interesting when you're a startup, especially one that takes on venture capital funding or anything like that, where you have investors, they focus a lot on growth. But I think that we're moving to a place in the world where it's really important to build in a sustainable long-term way, something that focuses on the future. And so the fact that we're delivering enough value to real people out there in the world that we are achieving some kind of profitability, that blows my mind. That's something that I take a look at and I'm like, oh my God, we actively can help pay and support the people not only on our own team, invest a little bit in growth, but solve real problems in the world. And so that's what really makes me feel good every day.
Wow. All right. And for people that don't know about Spira, what do you say is the thing that you're specialized on?
Okay. So what I want to kind of communicate to people, right, is that for the longest time, the world really relied on animals, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
They really, really relied on animals to produce all the different things that we use. And then we shifted to petroleum and we started using like petroleum and oil to create all the different things around us. And I think we now have this opportunity to choose. We have a choice, each and every one of us, to basically decide, do we have to stick to the same way of producing the things that we need? And like the resounding answer is taking a look at the way the world's going. If we choose to stick to the same way of producing like all the things we need, ranging from food to plastics to colors to whatever it might be, the world isn't going to be a great place to live in. And so now we have this opportunity to transition to plants as a production, as a means of producing the things that we use, particularly like foods, different kinds of plastics, things like that, just renewable resources. And as somebody who really specializes in algae is the simplest kind of plant, and it is the fastest growing, most nutritionally dense. And so that's part of the emphasis on that. And that's something that I want people to know about Spira, is that we're not just producing colors, we're not just producing replacements for animal proteins. The opportunity here is to be the powerhouse that produces virtually anything that somebody needs.
Wow. All right. And so let's ask you this question. It's one of the last couple of questions that I have. If you were a superhero and you can create or start something to change something in this world, or provide a service, or provide a service or a product in this world, what would that superhero power be? Knowing
That's a
that
really good question.
knowing that you won't fail at it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that if I had a superpower and I could like point at somebody and be like, bam,
Yeah.
right? The one thing that I would do is have people self-actualize and realize their own potential. Because I think there's a lot of barriers in the way of people's realization of what they can actively accomplish if they don't fear, if they don't worry about surviving, if they don't worry about even like fear of success and like picking the wrong thing, having this analysis paralysis, not being able to actively choose intrinsically what is going to move you, who am I, why do I exist, and what do I want to do. And so if I had one power, it'd be able to like finger guns at somebody and be like, boom, and they know exactly their reason, their purpose for existence.
Wow. That's great. And what are you grateful for in 2020?
Oh, I'm grateful for so many things, man. Like, I'm grateful for some really strong friendships, including on my team. I love my team. They've done such an amazing job of like solidifying like our business and doing so good, just making sure that we're pushing for profitability. Not only that, but like I'm really, really grateful for the kind of experiences that I get to have through the work that I do. So I just came back from living in a simulated moon mission environment. I lived in this habitat on the side of a volcano in Hawaii for 2 weeks with like 5 strangers, and got to test out a lot of our algae technology there. And something like that, I mean, like, you asked me 5 years ago before I started Spira, I would have no clue that that was even a possibility or that was on the radar. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the experiences that I'm able to have and the people that I'm able to share them with. I'm really grateful for technology like this to be able to reconnect with people in my past too.
Awesome. So Elliot, we know that you're a busy CEO, you know, taking care of things and creating algae and making food and nutritious food for people to live a healthy lifestyle. And so we've been grateful to hear from you and sharing that knowledge with us. Before we let you go, we know that Spira has opened a lot of opportunities with partners around the globe, working with the United Nations food program or working with the National Science Foundation. Uh, Tell us about those experiences. Which one do you like the most, and how they benefiting Spira?
Yeah. So I think our collaboration with the World Food Program was really surprising. It kind of came out of nowhere. Um, we had the ability to fly out to Munich and meet with them, and they recently just received the Nobel Peace Prize for their work in helping eliminate or really like aid in areas that are experiencing famine. And so when you take a look at people's fundamental needs like food, water, shelter, things like that, if you have a scarcity, if you have a limitation of what you're able to get, it brings people into conflict, and they really fight because they're not able to get just basic necessities.
Right.
And so we had this opportunity of going out and working with the World Food Program on identifying algae farms all over the world, farmers in developing countries. So now we work with farmers in countries like Burkina Faso or Peru, India, Indonesia, Thailand, really, you name it, we have some sort of contact there. I was just visited by some of our farmers in Guatemala, which is wild. And so being able to connect with that global network of people who are actively growing this like nutrient dense algae on the ground enabled us not only to help scale our business and what we're able to sell in the United States, but also help them and really enable them to have more than a living wage, produce a local protein source in the case of famine, and absorb tons of CO2 from the environment. So I think that collaboration was not only really surprising, but rewarding on both ends of things. And I really look forward to continuing work with the World Food Program and engaging them in ways that actively help reduce hunger.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that we need to know about Spira or you living in California and your team?
So if you do want to connect with us, follow us at Spira Inc., SPIRAINC. You can follow us on all the social media. In particular, you can reach out to us at info@spirainc.com. Beyond that, be on the lookout for some really exciting announcements from us. We're releasing new ingredients. We have all sorts of positions available that we're hiring for as well. So be on the lookout for that. And so please feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Everybody, man, just like what the man says. You can Google his name, Elliot Roth. It's ELLIOTROTH, and you find out more information about him and how to contact him. And you can go to his company. It's spirainc.com, right? Or that
Yes, spirainc.com.
.com, and you can find more information about it. And Elliot, man, thanks a lot, man, for coming in and sharing your wisdom
Thanks
and
to
your
Johnny.
knowledge. And we wish you well. We wish your company growth and keep inspiring us and keep creating healthy nutrients for us.
Thanks, man.